another dramatic tariff threat from Donald Trump tonight. He now says all steel and aluminum imports will be slapped with a 25% duty, including from Canada. He dropped that bombshell while speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One on his way to the Super Bowl.
Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum, too.
Canada sends about $11 billion worth of steel to the U.S. each year, or about 90% of total production. It also exports an equivalent dollar figure in aluminum, which accounts for more than half of American consumption. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is in Paris tonight, reacting to this latest threat from the U.S. President. The promise of a trade war is forcing Canada to shore up alliances overseas, where countries are also living under the shadow of looming tariffs from the U.S. Ashley Burke takes us through what Trump is now saying and how Trudeau is responding.
Just before midnight in Paris, returning to his hotel, the Prime Minister facing a new round of questions about Donald Trump's latest threats.
Are you going to retaliate? Is Canada a viable country?
This scene unfolding after the U.S. president repeatedly took aim at Canada again.
The Prime Minister said this weekend.
Trump asked point blank by Fox News about Justin Trudeau's concern that his threat to annex Canada is real.
Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state.
And on whether Canada did enough at the border to stop tariffs beyond the current 30-day pause.
Is that good enough?
No, it's not good enough.
So more needed in 30 days.
Something has to happen. It's not sustainable, and I'm changing it.
Then on Air Force One, an escalation. Trump said Canada shouldn't assume the U.S. will defend it.
We're making our country larger. We're making our country stronger. And in the case of Canada, if this should happen, I don't know how they can do it without us, because without the U.S., Canada really doesn't have a country.
And threatened to announce tariffs Monday on all steel and aluminum entering the states, including from Canada.
Everybody, steel.
Including Canada and Mexico?
Yeah, any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
What about aluminum, sir?
Aluminum, too.
This while Trudeau met with French President Emmanuel Macron. Both leaders are facing threats from Trump, who set his sights on the European Union next.
They're going to want to share notes about what they expect to come from Trump and how they might respond. And, you know, they might want to talk about how they might coordinate with each other in extreme situations. Trump is threatening to hit the EU with tariffs and pledging to take over Greenland, too.
We need Greenland because of national security, international security, world peace. And we'll have to do that. Canada, we'll see what happens with Canada.
A senior Canadian government official says the Prime Minister's office is aware of Trump's latest tariff threat against countries. But the government is waiting until it sees something official in writing before saying what Canada could do next. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Paris.
Now, this new threat is particularly worrisome for Ontario, which has a number of steel mills in places like Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie, to name a few. Catherine Cobden is the president and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association. She spoke earlier with CBC about the answer she would like to see from the Canadian government.
I'm hoping the Canadian government is connecting with the Trump administration to once again remind them of the work we have done to align our trade policy, of the economic harm we'll have on both sides of the border, of the highly integrated nature of our business, and the $20 billion of steel trade that's basically exposed to this idea. So, you know, again, as their largest trading partner in steel, I think we and as one that has worked extremely hard to align with U.S. trade policy, taken direct measures against China, for example, I think we have a better and supply chain transparency. No one else in any other trading relationship on steel has done this but Canada and the United States. So I think we have a very strong narrative to advance tonight. If that doesn't happen, then we have a very strong necessity to respond hard and fast with retaliatory tariffs of our own.
And respond, well, Premier Doug Ford did just that tonight. He didn't waste any time reacting to this latest threat from the U.S. president. Ford posted this on social media tonight. This is the next 4 years, says Ford, shifting goalposts and constant chaos, putting our economy at risk. He goes on to say, I'm asking the people for a strong, stable 4-year mandate that outlasts the Trump administration to do whatever it takes to always be ready to protect Ontario. All of this coming as Ford will be on a 2-day trip to Washington this week to talk about tariffs, meeting with American lawmakers and business leaders. But as Sean Jeffords shows us, the trip happening during the provincial election is sparking a fresh round of criticism.
I love the U.S. I love the Americans.
PC leader Doug Ford continuing his charm offensive on American cable news stations, just days ahead of a trip to meet with political leaders in Washington, D.C. And that plan has sparked a fresh round of criticism from opposition leaders at home. Over the weekend, the Tory leader defended the trip as a way to push back against Donald Trump's tariff threats.
I'm going down there with a group of premiers and make sure that Ontario has a strong voice. Canada has a strong voice. I'll be talking to elected officials down there, business people and other people, to get our message out that we're stronger together.
But Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie has accused Ford of ignoring the traditional caretaker convention during this election. That protocol sees the Premier avoid conducting all but the most essential government business and avoid any perception government resources are being used during the campaign. Ford has said the PCs will pay for the travel, but appearing on CBC's Fresh Air, Crombie said the PC leader should have done more ahead of the tariff threats to build bonds with American decision makers.
It's about time. Like, where's he been? He's had 7 years to build these relationships.
NDP leader Marit Stiles spent the day meeting with volunteers in her downtown Toronto riding. She says Ford is not headed to the U.S. because of the tariff threat.
You know what, Doug Ford, as far as I'm concerned, he quit as Premier when he called this election. I think the only person he's actually in this for is himself and his job. And he sees this as an opportunity, or he wouldn't be there.
Green Party leader Mike Schreiner said in a statement that Ford called the snap election to capitalize in a moment of political instability. Instead of taking vanity trips to Washington, why doesn't he take action on the things that are hurting Ontarians every day, like the high cost of housing and groceries? This expert says Ford could consult opposition leaders and dispel their concerns that the trip was done without much fanfare.
Compromise could potentially be met in the middle and say, listen, we understand that this is an important meeting. We understand that you need to be there to meaningfully advance Ontario's interest. Let's meet in the middle. Attend the meeting, but let's not tweet 1,000 photos from it. Let's not hold press conferences. Go, come back, and let's get back to business of politicking.
Ford is chair of the Council of the Federation, which includes all 13 provincial and territorial premiers. That group is in Washington Tuesday and Wednesday. The PC leader returns to the U.S. Capitol on February 20th, a week before Ontario goes to the polls. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Canadians didn't need this new tariff threat, coming tonight to start rethinking some of their habits, because the Buy Canadian movement looks like it's growing, with more people across the country saying they'd like to see better trade between provinces. As JP Tasker shows us, it's also got some second-guessing their travel plans down south.
The Buy Canadian movement has become a huge force in the last week alone, changing how and where people shop.
A vast amount of people are only purchasing made-in-Canada products.
Grocery store owners like Marilyn Dibb are astounded by just how quickly Canadians have dumped American products in the wake of President Donald Trump's tariff threats.
They are completely boycotting the American-made product.
And at the Canada-U.S. border, officials are reporting a huge drop in southbound traffic at some ports of entry. In Blaine, Washington, near Vancouver, wait times were just 5 minutes, down from the usual 19 minutes on a Sunday, let alone Super Bowl Sunday. All of that has some U.S. lawmakers furious with the president.
It unnecessarily harms a relationship with Canada that's been such a good relationship.
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear says Canadian demand for bourbon has dropped off in the wake of Trump's aggression.
Most Americans didn't vote for the president on these issues. They don't view Canada in the way that he does.
Neighboring Illinois does big business with Canada too. It sent $30 billion worth of goods north last year. A lot of it was food. Trump's put that in jeopardy, says this congresswoman.
Just making it that much more difficult for our farmers to keep their heads above water. It's very serious.
Minister Anita Anand is working with the provinces to quickly dismantle decades-old trade barriers between provinces to help the economy along if Trump delivers a blow. Canada needs to become more self-sufficient, whatever the president does in the end, she says.
Every one of us wants Canada to remain strong and free, and we are prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure that occurs.
Some Canadians have soured on the U.S., and Trump's latest threat to impose steel and aluminum tariffs won't help. The country's 13 premiers are headed to Washington this week, though, to smooth things over, part of a diplomatic push to get Trump to drop the tariffs for good. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, it seems like all our stories are related tonight because Trump made his new comments about tariffs while on his way to the Super Bowl, the other big story tonight. On the line in New Orleans, nothing less than NFL history as the reigning champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, were going for the three-peat. Never been done before. But the Eagles, the Philadelphia Eagles, did not allow that to happen and took home the Super Bowl title. Joining us live now from Real Sports in downtown Toronto is Nama Weingarten. Nama, what's the energy like where you are?
So, Sebastian, I know the bar is pretty much completely empty here behind me, but believe it when I say that the energy here was high tonight as the Philadelphia Eagles stopped the Kansas City Chiefs from getting that victory they so badly wanted. Now, if the Chiefs had won this game, this would have been their third Super Bowl in a row, something no NFL team has achieved before, and looks like after tonight, it's going to stay that way. The last time the Eagles won a Super Bowl was all the way back in 2017, and tonight was really a redemption from them since they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl back in 2023. I spoke with some fans here tonight just after the game, and here's what they had to say.
I've had 2 children. Besides that, I'm marrying my wife. Best moment of my life. Thank you.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
We knew they were going to win. It was going to be 35. They got 40. That's amazing.
Lost the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, and just it's great to see the boys catch a win.
KC did not deserve the three-peat. Nobody deserved a three-peat, but the Eagles, beautiful.
And another thing that did end up here tonight that caused much speculation throughout this weekend was whether or not Kendrick was going to perform his hit song, Not Like Us. Quite a diss against Toronto rapper here, Drake. Even around this bar, people were speculating, is he gonna defy the defamation lawsuit over some of the disses in that song? Is he gonna not perform it? But he indeed did. Something that is worth to note, though, that it did end up skipping over the word pedophile, arguably the biggest diss made against Drake in that song with no evidence, but he did end up skipping that word over here in this performance. But he did shoot his shot directly at Drake when during his set, he turned around and said something along the lines of, I know they want us to perform their favorite song, but you know they love to sue. And over here as well, people were dancing along to this diss track here in Drake's hometown of Toronto. And here's what people here had to say about their city's rapper getting dissed like this on the world's biggest stage.
Well deserved. He did an amazing job, as he should. I love them both, but I'm not gonna lie. Within the battle with Drake and Kendrick did win the battle. Performance was great. We were dancing the entire time.
Put on a show for the people. He won the Grammys. He showed why he won the Grammys. It's Kendrick. Everybody loves Kendrick. Some people hate it. That's part of the game.
I wasn't sure if he was going to still go with the smoke, but the fact that he still said Drake as he was doing it, I was a little taken aback. I mean, I'm all for it, but it was pretty crazy, yeah.
Just because it's Toronto, you should not be dissing Drake like that. That's how I personally feel.
Well, the bar here is all empty. The night has wrapped up, but you know what that means? The countdown to next year's Super Bowl has officially started. Sebastian?
Thank you, Nama. That's the CBC's Nama Weingarten. Well, it was another special Super Bowl party at a Toronto homeless shelter tonight. About 120 men, gathering to enjoy a feast and the game on the big screen.
It's uplifting. It's good for the morale around here, right? The guys need it sometimes. It's a hard life sometimes. So no, it's really good. It's really good to have the support of these organizations to help us out.
And the stigma of being homeless on the street, especially in Toronto, you're right in everyone's face. That's your reputation, and suddenly
your social connection can be damaged. So this makes me feel like I have a connection to the social world, and it gives me hope and inspiration to sort of like keep motivating myself to get on my feet.
Rabba Fine Foods donating pallets of food for the event, which has now become a tradition. This is the 9th annual Super Bowl party hosted by the Good Shepherd Ministries. People across the province were shoveling out today after a winter storm moved overnight. Some areas seeing as much as 20 centimeters of snow, and it looks like even more is on the way this week. Ward Anderson is joining us now with our first look at the forecast. Hey, Ward.
Well, Sebastian, I know that I'm not alone in that I woke up this morning to a winter wonderland outside my house. Snow really did come down, and throughout Ontario, many of us woke up to as much as 16 centimeters of snow in Kitchener and as much as 15 around the GTA as well. Well, we're going to get a break from that for a couple of days. Not going to have some snow, but we do have couple of possibilities coming in, a messy system coming through. When and where exactly, there's more to come on that. But as far as Monday goes, little lake effect snow going to continue around the bay in the usual areas, Cottage Country, Barrie, places like that. But for the most part, we're going to be staying clear of any precipitation or snow in the GTA and around the area for the next couple of days. Like I said, because of that lake effect snow, we will get some of those bands that'll come down and hit us here and there, but we're not talking about any kind of a major event or any major snow. Through Tuesday, looking at it being heavier around Barrie, Orillia, places like that closer to the bay, but we should stay pretty dry until midweek when another messier system is going to be coming through. I'll tell you more about that in the long-range forecast coming up.
A Toronto councillor is calling for a review of the size, scope, and safety plans for Metrolinx projects after a woman was struck by a dump truck in East York on Thursday and rushed to hospital with life-threatening injuries.
I've asked them to investigate their contractor. Are they using the haul route? Is this happening more than once? Everyone in this neighborhood's now very worried. Parents are worried about their kids going to school and crossing this street.
Fletcher is calling for Metrolinx to investigate its contractors and ensure they are using safe haul routes. She's also calling for a safety review of the Pape Salmon Ontario line site as well as Gerard and Carla, where she says 100 dump trucks a day will remove soil. In a statement, Metrolinx responded to Councillor Fletcher's request, saying, quote, "Our thoughts are with the individual who was injured and their loved ones. An investigation is underway and we are reviewing internally. We will continue to work with our partners at the City of Toronto to ensure the safest and most appropriate routes are being used at all times." Toronto Police say there are no updates on the woman's condition at this time. Traffic Services, for their part, are conducting their own investigation into what led up to the collision. Now, athletes from around the world are in the spotlight at the 2025 Invictus Games in British Columbia. Prince Harry launched the event more than a decade ago, honoring injured military and service personnel. But as Yvette Bren shows us, this year's event is all about bridging political divides.
Even at the star-studded opening of the Invictus Games, a nod to the tensions between Canada and the U.S.
And look, I know our countries are having a moment right now, right?
BC's premier addressed the crowd, including the hundreds of wounded veterans from over 20 countries who will be competing.
Our soldiers have fought and died and cried and celebrated beside Americans for generations.
That unity hit a sour note this week, with many Canadian fans booing the U.S. national anthem at several sporting events.
Oh, say, can you see?
But at the Invictus Games, athletes say there's been none of that. Afghanistan veteran and former U.S. Marine Robert Dominguez says he leaves politics to the politicians.
I just let them deal with what they have to deal with, and we just continue to compete and support each other as athletes.
This 29-year-old, an ex-U.S. Air Force member, says he's been talking to Canadian athletes about Trump's tariffs and understands their frustration.
It's really saddening, honestly. It's really hard, especially on your guys' economy and your guys' just country. So yeah, it just breaks my heart, honestly.
Some have lost limbs, others have lost friends. Veterans stress the spirit of these games is to persevere together.
They just embrace us. It's amazing, honestly. They're able to put aside everything else and still embrace us. Like, it's amazing.
Here, Canadians and Americans embrace, as they have long done.
Doesn't matter what the politicians say, because if you need us, you just say the word, USA.
The Invictus Games, a showcase of friendship in a shifting world. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
And a look at Ottawa right now, where it's mostly cloudy and feeling like -6. Ward is back now with the full forecast, talking snow, and, well, you guessed it, more snow. Hey, Ward.
Well, Sebastian, we might have another one of those mornings where we wake up to a winter wonderland and a blanket of snow outside, but it won't be until later in the week. As we're going into our Monday, it's going to stay right down below freezing, just below the freezing mark throughout the province, and we will continue to have a little bit of lake effect snow left over from the past day or so, and it'll continue into the next couple of days. But we have this low pressure system moving its way up from our southern border, and we have this cone of uncertainty. Now, what that means is the system is still a little too soon to be tracked, and it could go one of two ways. One way is that it's a snowfall event that will come through and blanket us with snow, much like we experienced waking up Sunday morning. If that happens, we're talking about mostly snow with also mixed in precipitation, rain, freezing rain. Now, the second one would have a messier mix with more of that mixed precipitation and less snow. It's a little too soon to tell, but that's what we'll be looking at as we go into Wednesday and Thursday into midweek. You can see those temperatures are going to drop right there in the middle of the week, especially if you're in southern Ontario and around the Golden Horseshoe. And we could again be talking about a significant amount of snow and coming quickly, just like we saw as we woke up on Sunday morning. And then we might get a little bit of a break from it as those temperatures continue to get colder. It might warm up a little bit, bringing with us some messy, snowy weather coming up this weekend.
Thank you, Ward. Well, that's our show for you tonight. Thanks for watching.